I wanted to take a moment here to get on a soapbox that maybe not a lot of people care about, but I personally care rather deeply about with this league mechanic, and that I don't see talked about very often, with a lot of the focus in people's problems with the league rightfully landing on the downsides with crangling and things like that. Now, the purpose of this video isn't to downplay the other issues that you may feel, or indeed I feel, the league has, but more to shine a light on what I really believe was a missed opportunity that, if this system goes core, I hope gets corrected. With that out of the way, and no other intro needed, let's get straight to it. The Scourge passive tree is what I'm talking about, and this is a part of the system that, to me at least, has felt really like an afterthought, and from the conversations I've seen in the community, seems to be the same for most people. The majority of conversations not even veering anywhere near it. It kind of was introduced, and, you know, people are aware of it, and they assigned their points, and then everybody just kind of forgot about it. Anyways, I'll list my problems and lay out the solutions I would want for this system right now. There are a lot of upgrades on the passive tree that are really basic, boring, stat-focused ones. Things like 25% more corruption for various item bases, or +1 slot for maps, or +1 slot for items that you just kind of get as soon as you're at the level for them, because why wouldn't you? Like, they're very good. I'm not trying to say they're not strong enough. They're just not interesting. They're not really a choice. I'm not saying that we need to take these things away from the system, though. I certainly don't want to remove power from the crangling aspect and the crafting aspect of this league mechanic. It doesn't need that. I just want to move the power around to make it more interesting and maybe even more powerful. My ideal system here would see the level system leveraged in two different, distinct ways. First, there would be the passive effects that I mentioned earlier, things like just Scourge gain, and those would automatically be gained by reaching certain level breakpoints, Scourge levels, that is, not character levels. And these would correspond to the things that you already automatically just click and want. So stuff like Scourge jewelry faster and Scourge armor faster would all be compressed down into just you get to Scourge things faster, which would have a cap and would do so at an increased rate based on level up to that cap. You would place the cap not super far into the end game, by the way. I'm not trying to advocate for more super top tier min-max. You'd probably reach this cap around the time you would reach white maps in an average playthrough. Of course, my dog is deciding that right now he's thirsty and needs to go and drink in the background when I have a good take of the script. I'm leaving this in. But yeah, essentially, the things that are the baseline for the endgame use of the system would be automatically in place by the time you reach what is the baseline endgame of Path of Exile. So, say, on average, your players have around 25 Scourge levels by the time they're through the story and into early mapping. You try and balance it and make it so that it doesn't take more than, say, 20, maybe reaching on 25, but you'd want to play it safe and have it be like 20 Scourge levels to acquire all the uninteresting stat boosts that are currently junking up the passive tree. So by the time you got 20 to 25 Scourge levels and you have a character like level 75 to 85, you're in early to mid white tier and yellow maps, you would have all of that stuff just locked in. You know, you'd have your feet under you in the league mechanic, essentially. Sort of like getting the rogues in the heist to a certain level, or getting, you know, revealing everybody on your chart with betrayal, the basic foundation of the mechanic, so you can actually start to sink your teeth into it. The next way the system would reward you would be with passive points that we currently have, but with a far different looking tree. Something more akin to Atlas trees or an Ascendancy tree, with a limited number of points, perhaps one gained per 5 levels or per 3 Scourge levels, so much fewer than we currently have, and much more impactful perks. We can allow these perks to be impactful, because much like Atlas nodes or Ascendancy passives, they would have opportunity cost. At no point will a player earn enough points to assign anything, or everything, pardon me. Perhaps at most being able to select half of the points on the tree or so. Of course, there would be a respec option to change your choices for adapting to new strategies, or changing if you just don't like one particular way of farming. As we have for the Ascendancy nodes and for the Atlas nodes. Again, this is a thing they've done a lot before, and I'm not sure why they departed from it. But the gist of it is that by introducing actual opportunity cost to assigning your points, it would then open up design space to do much more powerful and interesting things. A few examples that I came up with off the top of my head: Scourge maps could be scourged an additional 2 times. That would be an impactful point. You can go from having 10 times, or 10 rolls on a Scourge map, to 12, so you could push a little bit of extra juice out of a single individual Scourge map if you just want to go all the way with it. Scourge items drop 1/10 as often, but drop with lucky rolls, which is something I've seen suggested a lot in the community. That could be a passive point on the tree that you can choose to spec into if you want to try and get really good Scourged items off the ground. If you want to just ignore them, though, you don't click that point. Scourged items have a 5% chance to drop uncorrupted, but still with Scourge mods. That would pair pretty darn well with other Scourge items from the ground investment, so you could see how a tree could form here, where you would have passives leading down a certain branch of the tree that all have to do with Scourged items. And at the tip of it, you could have the most powerful mod because it takes the most investment to get there. This is not a concept that's new to Path of Exile. You have the 4-point investment on the Atlas trees, the 4-point investment on the Ascendancy trees. Those often are where the most powerful parts of an Ascendancy are. Things like Inquisitor's ability to ignore resistances, or things like the invasion boss nodes in Arthane that for 2 points you just get an invasion boss, which is kind of crap, but if you put in 4 points, suddenly that invasion boss is dropping div cards and scarabs and sextants and stacks of chaos. And this is a basic, fundamental concept to Path of Exile and ARPGs as a whole. Honestly, to just video games with passive trees as a whole. And I really don't understand why we just got a big box with stats in it. Can you tell? I'm going off script here. Can you tell that this bothers me? Anyways, other ideas. You can have chance to add influence, and at the same time adding a random influence mod to an item that is scourged to tier 3. You could have something that can be scourged a second time while it's at tier 3. That could be a passive point, so you have 1 extra chance and it would scourge it again. So many interesting ideas you can have here. And a lot of these things are suggestions that have been suggested by the community as just wholesale solutions to the system. You know, like, oh, Scourge would be great if we just added this one thing. But the thing is, you change up this passive tree in the ways that I've suggested, and you could add 7 different things, and maybe 2 of them weren't actually very good solutions and they're not that strong, but that doesn't matter because the other 5 are interesting. And that makes it so much easier to design a compelling mechanic, doesn't it, as a designer? Because you can make a couple mistakes. We've seen that before as well with Atlas nodes and with Ascendancy nodes. There have been many times in the past where there have been Ascendancy nodes that aren't worth clicking. But do people say Ascendancies are garbage because of that? No, they just don't play the Ascendancy with nodes that aren't worth clicking. So you have this one dead spot in your mechanic, but still 80 to 90% of the mechanic is compelling and interesting and people engage with it. And then there's those weirdos who go and play the dead Ascendancy because they want to challenge themselves, and even that has some amount of value. Whereas you have this big block of stats that Scourge currently has as a passive tree, and nobody makes interesting decisions with it. It's not a mechanic, it's just a blob of numbers, and it's not fun. Anyways, I had an outro written, but I'm going to leave that as the outro. I feel very strongly on this issue, and I really wish that they had the time to implement it in the way that they've implemented so many elegant systems before, like Ascendancies and like Atlas nodes. And really, I don't want to rag on GGG too hard here, because the expansion that they put out alongside the Scourge League mechanic, 3.16 as a whole, accomplishes so much. There's so many changes to the base core game. You know, the regular passive tree got a system, or got an improvement on a system much like the one I'm already describing with Masteries, and that obviously was quite a lot of work. And then Delve got a big update, and then there's all sorts of little quality of life things, stacking currency, so I do see why Scourge ended up as something of an afterthought, and in particular Scourge's passive tree as an afterthought of an afterthought. I just really hope that if this does eventually make it core, it gets a makeover and becomes much more of a central pillar on which the mechanic as a whole can stand. Anyways, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed. And I don't know, if you enjoyed this video and you want more rant videos, I have other strong opinions on Path of Exile, so you can go ahead and let me know down below. Y'all have a good one.